So Jax Forest is officially at Oklahoma State, and he started his Cowboy career with a bang, making his debut at Bedlam, winning by a first period pinfall over Oklahoma's 33-pounder Charmoli. Um, and so David Taylor is faced one of the more unique situations we've ever seen in wrestling. I mean, you take a guy, you pluck him from the high school hallways, and put him on your team in the middle of the season, the middle of what was seemingly his senior year. And Jax Forest is now went from a Bishop McCourt crusher to an Oklahoma State Cowboy within a week. And why do you do this? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, Jax is someone who can clearly wrestle at a high level. You know, I said he's the most touted recruit in Oklahoma State history, and that's a crazy thing to say. But as crazy as it is, it's also true. This guy was a senior world team member. That is just unprecedented for even the most historic program in wrestling, the Oklahoma State Cowboys. But with someone like Jax, is he someone that you want a redshirt next year? Probably not. It would seem like he's obviously ready to go and compete at this level. But is there consideration given to not just redshirting him this year, but actually using him this year? And there's a couple things you have to weigh there. I think there's definitely pros on both sides, and there's definitely cons on both sides of that decision. The pros to use Jax Forest this year. And this could be the pro that ultimately stops the conversation. Like, the full stop. This is your reason. You don't need to talk about it any further. Jax Forest is your best 133-pounder on your team. Full stop. That's reality. He is the best 33-pounder. He's better than Ronnie Ramirez. Richard Figueroa, at present, is not an NCAA qualifier level wrestler at 133. If you just look at the results, forget what he's done. Reality is this year, and the reality is it doesn't seem like Richard is going to be able to even qualify for the tournament. So he's your best option. And for David Taylor, I said this a year ago. He's aggressive. He's going to be aggressive. And I kind of incorrectly, as I was looking at the landscape last year, you think about Wyatt Hendrickson, Dustin Plott, Dean Hamady, Caleb Fish. They had all of those guys had red shirts. And so you would think, last year if they had redshirted, then they come this year, they could really make a push for it. David put all his chips in the middle, and it was ultimately a brilliant decision. The Cowboys created so much momentum, and actually not just created momentum, they kept the momentum rolling. David Taylor comes, that creates momentum. And then, the world team thing, and that was amazing. It brings home a medal, and then the incredible recruiting class momentum, and then they wrestle all these guys, and Wyatt has the moment of the NCAA tournament, and they have a great result, and they just kept that momentum going into the senior level season, and so he gets on the team and wins worlds, and kind of shows, hey, you can do it all here at Oklahoma State. So if you're David Taylor, the idea of taking a step back and finishing third last year, to where if you don't have Jax Forest, it may be hard to replicate third place or second place this year without his services. And that perception can be reality. And how he's viewed and how the momentum has carried over, that's important, I think, for the Cowboys and Coach Taylor. So I think that's a part of the consideration. Now, from an individual standpoint for Jax Forest, that's where it gets interesting to me. And that's where it gets really, really tough to pull that trigger and say, Jax, you're going. Because I'm just, as a coach and former coach, and I just believe really strongly in what training and spending time at a program, especially an elite program like this, can do for a wrestler. And to me, Jax Forest with a full preseason of folk style, a full first semester of folk style, and then unleash that first year, I think without question, he's going to have a better result for his freshman year than he would if he wrestles this year, right? You got to remember, Jax's year has been crazy. He makes the senior world team. So from basically late February to October, he's exclusively trained freestyle. Then in October, November, he makes the switch. He does a little bit of high school folk style. So he hasn't had that full run-up that a lot of guys have, like someone like Marcus Blaze has had even, wrestling first semester for Penn State. And when you consider this weight class, Lucas Bird, Ben DeVino, Marcus Blaze, Ryan Crookham, and now Jax Forest, This is not one where if he was a 25 pounder, I'd say, okay, I think he could come in and win this tournament. And I'm not saying he can't. I'm saying it's going to be really, really tough. And the fact of the matter is, freestyle and folk style have some very real differences. Energy management for Jax can be a challenge. We've seen it. The guy goes so daggone hard, he doesn't really calibrate. He doesn't really preserve energy. He just goes, goes, goes. And sometimes he gets to the end of the matches. He doesn't have as much left. We saw that at U23s even. He can fatigue. Now you're taking the hardest, the most physically demanding style of wrestling, NCAA folk style wrestling, 7 minutes. It is different. It is different. And the amount of time Jax has to get himself all the way up to speed and ready to compete, it's a real question. And now Jax is a one-of-a-kind wrestler. He's in, one of the greatest environments to train wrestling. So the idea that he couldn't get up to speed in a couple months, that's not lost on me. I think that's absolutely a possibility. But you can't deny that there's risk. And you can't deny that he's not just going to show up and win this tournament. Another factor to, use him or not use him is like, well, how much does Jax actually help the Cowboys team? They currently sit 40-ish points behind second place Ohio State. They're well behind the Buckeyes, who are sitting in second. That's not even to talk about Penn State, who is in really a separate category for NCAA wrestling. So Jax, even if he wins NCAAs and scores 20 points, that I don't know if that puts him over the top to even get second place. Ohio State's going to have to come back to the field a little bit. Really, where Oklahoma State needs the most help are that 74, 84, 97 heavyweight range. Those are the real weights where they can make or break the Cowboy season. Someone like Facundo Ryder, Merrill are both looking like, 50-50 All-Americans. If they can punch those tickets through, if Connor Doucette can, wind up on the podium, that's what really is going to, I think, determine Oklahoma State's, season finish. Like how do they do a Big 12s? How do they do it in NCAAs? I think it's those ways. Because Troy Spratley's going to do great. Sergio Vega is established. Landon Rabadua, he's a true freshman, but he and D. Lockett, they're established, right? They're big-time point scorers because they've beaten these guys. And what Jax is going to be is, somewhat in question. Now, I think the variance is there from, like, national champion to round of 12. I think that's, like, the ceiling and the floor for Jax Forest. But it's still, there's a lot in between there, right? So what they do, I don't think is an easy decision. I don't think it's one they take lightly. And I think there's some flexibility here for Jax in that, and Coach Taylor. He has the 5 dates. He's used one. There's 4 left. He could wrestle Virginia Tech and potentially Aaron Seidel. He could wrestle against UNI and Iowa State and Iowa. And then at that point, and he could go to an open, wrestle unattached, and that wouldn't count. So with that, you're going to have a glut of data that says where Jax is at. If he wins all those matches and he wins the open, and he beats Drake Ayala and Evan Frost, it may be a situation where David Taylor, it's too clear and you have to use him. But it wouldn't be without risk, and it wouldn't be without. And you have to also remember the negative recruiting in wrestling is a very, very real thing, right? And programs use other programs against the other, right? And there's plenty of teams and they use this tactic. And if Jax is used and it doesn't go well, don't think for a second that other teams aren't going to use that as ammo. That's just reality. Look, they used him. He wasn't ready, and that was a mistake. And they were thinking more about the team than individual, which I don't know if that's necessarily a negative. I think it is, even though it's an individual sport, it is a team sport as well. So that's an interesting dynamic to consider as well. But I'm just demonstrating for you that that's going to be the rhetoric if it doesn't go well. If he even gets 6th, 7th, 8th, they use a year of Jax Forest. They still didn't get in the top 2, and he'd be better next year. I don't think anyone could disagree that he's going to be better a year from now. But the ultimate, maybe not the ultimate, but the final piece of this puzzle that makes the Jax usage such an interesting question, a difficult question to answer, is the down the line roster management that David Taylor has to do. And let's just look at it from 33 to 49. You've got Jaden Rainey, Jordan Rainey, Jax Forest, Sergio Vega. Okay, that's not to even mention Tegan Jameson and Casey Swiderski and some of the other recruits they have. Those are 4 blue chip guys for 3 weights, right? And so how you juggle the red shirts and the usage and the bumping, and does Vega go up and Jax slides in at 41, which is what it sounds like will probably happen. I think if you get a year of Jax, not to say out of the way, but out of the way, it gives you some flexibility next year in how you use all these incredible, incredible recruits. So these are the first world problems of Coach Taylor in Oklahoma State. They have so much talent. It's tough to see how it all gets in. Coach Cale Sanderson, he's dealing with his own version of these first world problems, and it's going to be a fun question. And people have I think, and here's what's interesting. Like, everyone is like, do it. But I think that's. I mean, do I want to see it? Of course, do I want? I want to watch Jax Forest wrestle in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, I want to see that. But there is a part of me that's like, well, yeah, that's what I want. But like, is that the actual best thing for Jax Forest? And that's where I get hung up on like a conclusive answer, because I'm just not sure. And the fact that Jax does want to go, which I'm not saying he does, but I don't know if that factors in, because I think, of course, he wants to go. Man, the rush he just felt wrestling in front of that insane Gallagher Ibercross, that's intoxicating. It's undeniable. It has to be an addictive feeling. And that's where the decision gets really, really tough. So you can tell I'm certainly conflicted. I think there's some definite risks of using him. I think there's obvious benefits of using him. Coach Taylor, at present, has done a great job with roster management. And what he did last year, what he's doing this year, it's hard to deny that he's got a good finger on the pulse. It's not a decision that has to be made right now, so it won't. But it's going to be maybe the number one story to follow for this second semester is what happens with Jax Forest. So that was a lot. I want to know what you think. What would you do if you were Coach Taylor? What would you do if you were Jax Forest? Would you wrestle this year?